Hi there, I'm Thibaut, an entrepreneur and consultant from France. Today I'd like to show you how to process data using a little Ruby gem I wrote this year called Kiba ETL. And ETL stands for extract, transform, and load. And it's a common term that you can see when you search for data processing patterns and resources. But before processing any data, you may ask why. It can be quite a bit of effort to collect data and write data processing jobs. So why would you do it in the first place is a very important question to ask, really. One answer is that maybe you are building a product which unlocks the data contained in legacy system of all kinds, where the legacy aspect makes it hard to ask specific questions. In this case, extracting the data using an ETL process, refining the data so that you can find answers to specific questions can provide a lot of business value. I'm currently advising a number of SaaS startups who process data following exactly that pattern. It's a very common situation these days, which provides interesting business opportunities. Another reason to process data is that what is called integration marketing. Imagine there is a very well established SaaS app with a very large customer base. Implementing some level of data integration allows you to augment this app and in turn attract their customers by providing extra value. Again, this is a very commonly seen pattern these days, which provides a lot of value. Of course, there is a lot more you can do with ETL and data processing in general. You can migrate your data from a schema to another. You can generate reports automatically, synchronize all or part of two of your apps, prepare and clean data before indexing it for a search engine, aggregate data from multiple sources to build a kind of search engine again, geocode data to present the records online to your users on a map, or implement a data import or export kind of feature for your user. So we've seen that there is a lot of benefits that you can get out of data processing. Now, how can you achieve that data processing without having to resort to painful graphical user interface based tools? One solution is the Kiba gem that I wrote after maintaining another gem called Active ETL for use. Kiba allows to write reliable, concise, well-tested and maintainable data processing jobs with Ruby, and that's exactly what I'm going to show you. Kiba follows a classical ETL structure you will all commonly see. A source will read rows and pass them to each transform, and once we are done, the rows will be sent to a destination. Kiba lets you define this pipeline, this ETL pipeline in Ruby, and we're going to see how. Here is a first short example of ETL pipeline described with the Kiba domain-specific language, or DSL. So you will see that it's very classical Ruby code where you can require components from outside, declare a source, here a CSV source, which will use a file name, transform the data to parse some dates, use a block form to transform a row, and sends the result after processing to a destination to insert it into your database. I'm going to break down the various components later, so hold on. Once you have this script written, you can run it using the Kiba command line tool, and it will just analyze your definition of your ETL job, create the sources and the transform, and make the data flow through the pipeline to process the data. To implement your source, you simply create a Ruby class which responds to each, and that will be responsible to yield the rows one by one. So this is really regular Ruby with simply a constructor and one method. Later in your ETL declaration, you will just pass the class and the constructor parameters to Kiba, so Kiba knows how to create and instantiate the source, and so that it can do its job. Here is a quick example of a CSV reading source. It will open a file with using the headers to build hashes of data, and then close the file at the end. So if you put this source in your Kiba source, it will just yield one row per CSV line. Of course, you can have much more complex sources. This one, for instance, will fetch a number of invoices using Regularly. Regularly is a subscription and billing system that I often use when implementing SaaS apps using their Ruby API. And we will cache the result locally so that you can iterate faster when implementing and improving your ETL job, which is a nice feature to have when you're developing it. As previously, from there, once you have your class, you can declare the source in your Kiba ETL script, and the arguments will be passed by Kiba to your source, and then the source will yield one row after another so that it can feed the ETL pipeline. In the very similar fashion, a Kiba transform is just a Ruby class which responds to process. It will receive the row at one stage of the pipeline. You can modify it as you want, and then you have to return it so that it can be passed to the next step of the pipeline. You use the exact same type of syntax, and you use the transform keyword in the DSL to declare that the pipeline must apply your transform at this specific stage. Here is a concrete example, a very simple one, using a keyword argument in Ruby, by the way, to create a reusable component, transform component, which will parse your data, probably a string, and try to transform it into a date Ruby instance using the specific format that you are passing. So this comes handy as a very reusable component to do data parsing. Finally, destination, which is the end of the pipeline. The destination likewise is a still Ruby class with a number of methods. It must respond to write, and it will take on responsibility to send your row to the target data store. And the close method must also be implemented to finalize any resource, like closing a file or a database connection. Here is again a simple example of a CSV destination. It's a command pattern in ETL to write down flat files at the end of your processing so that you can bulk load using a database, a specific tool to load the data in the database at a faster pace. And here we will just create a file, write the headers using the keys of the first row provided by the pipeline, and then close the file at the end to close it properly. So in short, Kiba ETL provides a code-centric ETL, which means that you can work properly and version your ETL jobs in Git using branches and all the features that you are used to when dealing with your Ruby code usually. You can have testable component. As you saw, there is a clear separation of concerns, which means that you can have very specific components and that they are quite easy to put under test, unlike a typical ETL process or component. Obviously, this makes those components very reusable, like the CSV components that we saw, the data manipulation. You can reuse a lot of this stuff across all your jobs and across your teams as well. This makes these ETL jobs very easy to maintain on the very long run. Actually, I've wrote jobs with a similar syntax using Active Warehouse ETL in like 2006, and they're still in production, unaffected. And people with less experience have been able to update it and modify them without issues. So it's very easy to manipulate them on the long run. They provide a low technical debt solution. Another advantage is that you can tap easily in the Ruby ecosystem and use existing gems for all kind of features. Can be bank account number format validation, databases of all kinds, HTTP requests, Redis caching, geocoding, etc. There is a lot of features that you can reuse in your ETL, which is pretty nice to have. And finally, I'll soon provide blueprints and specific components like a multi-threaded version in what I call Kiba Pro, which is a pro offering. If you're building or scaling something where data is important and you want me to help, please get in touch so that we can discuss collaboration. Let's prepare a very simple example of data processing, super basic, so you can get the basics exactly. It's a Ruby project, so we're going to create a gem file first with the number of gem we use, Kiba, the movie DB, because we are going to enrich a CSV file containing movies names, movies titles, with data coming from the MovieDB API. So you create your gem file, and yeah, we're going to use the awesome print gem, which is very nice to color print data structure, so you can save your eyes from pain. Just going to run bundle install, so we have all the required gems. And then in Movies ETL, our script, which we can color like Ruby, we are going to declare the classes that we need to build the source, like that. We're going to use keyword argument. And then for now, it will do just nothing. But then we can declare our CSV job, like that. And we can run it, like that. It does nothing for the moment. We're going to change that and modify the source so it can do something meaningful. So we're going to improve it and implement the each method, relying on the CSV library of Ruby itself. We open the file, we iterate over each of the row, and then we yield one row per line of CSV. And at the end, we will close the CSV file. What happens at this stage? It works, but we don't see anything. And it would be nice to be able to have a look at what is happening exactly. Here is how we can do that. Just after the source declaration, we can declare a little transform as a block form, and we will just put the row like that. And then we pass it, we return it to the as a result so that it's not lost in the pipeline of processing. We run again, and then we have our data. But it's a bit hard on the eyes, so we can use awesome print like that. And this way, we launch again, and we will have a color output, which is much easier on the eye. But now we have this file here, and it's not really clean. I mean, it's, we are mixing the implementation with the declaration of the source ETL process. So what we can do is just copy this part into a separate common.rb file that we can reuse. Let's do that. Like that. And then we just require the common file and start again. It works. Great. Now it's not exactly super useful because we don't do anything at all from the data. So you can sign up at the MovieDB website to get an API key. We are going to store the API key in a little file, the MovieDB, and then read the key like that. If you run it, it still works. Then we would like to enrich the data that we have to add the ratings and the vote count provided by the movie database to our pipeline of data. We can also use Ruby to create small DSL extensions. For instance, let's do that for the awesome print transform. What if we could only call show me like that, and it would show the line. If we do it like that, it will fail. But we can implement that leveraging Ruby. This way you can create sweet extensions of the DSL to be more productive. It works. Similarly, it's often a good idea to work on a very small subset of your data, so you can have a clear idea of what is happening before working on a larger scale. What if you could write a limit to just keep one row? We can do exactly that this way. Like that. We can also leverage things like environment variables. Will still work, and we can limit if needed, like that. So again, being able to zoom and to show the data and to limit the processing to a subset is very useful when you iteratively develop a feature of an ETL job. But now we need to query the movie database to enrich the data that we have in our data set. Let's do that. So how we can achieve the movie DB lookup? We're going to create a little class, pass it the MovieDB API key, and decide on which field the lookup should occur. Then later in the process will be called by the Kiba pipeline, and we will achieve a simple lookup of the movie using the title field. And for the moment, to keep things simple, just pick the first one. And then we are going to store in our row the vote average and the vote count, so we can have a better data. Let's save that. And then we need to put it here. Transform the movie, how it called already? Movie DB lookup, yeah. API key, and then title field, which is just title. So now we have source with a limit, a configurable limit, and we show the data right after the source. We transform it through the movie DB lookup, and then we show it again. Let's run that. You see the data before the transform and after. You see, before we don't have a vote average, and after the transform we have a vote average. So let's comment this out, and now run that without a limit. Here we are. We have our improved data. And now maybe we want to dump that into some data destination. Like that. So here we just open a file initially. For the first row, we are going to use the keys of the row, and then later pour the values and close the file at the end. Let's do that again with a little limit to go faster for now. Commenting out the show me. Whoops. Whoops, again. This time it works, but you don't show anything. What if we could print the output straight from the ETL job? We can do that with another feature of Kiba called the post process, which is simply a block that will be called at the end of the processing. We can do things like this one. Oh, the post process is not executing because the limit we implemented just abort everything. So maybe you can just modify the limit so it will not stop the program but return an empty row instead, like that. Say that again. This time our post process is run. It's not super clear, so we can improve it a bit using a tool like Csv Fix, which will pretty print our CSV file, which is a bit easier on the eye again. If we do that without a limit at all, wait a bit. Here is our data. Maybe now we want to only keep the very good movies with at least a vote of 8. Let's do that. It's quite easy. We can do that this way. Make sure to place this transform after the movie DB lookup. Like that. We are going to remove the row from the pipeline unless a certain condition is respected. That's it. So in short, we have a fairly easy to maintain with reusable components that we have all placed with very specific concerns, which is able to enrich our movies CSV into a better movie CSV with proper filtering and better data. That's it. If your project involves ETL with or without Kiba ETL and you want me to help, please get in touch so we can discuss it.